The stars had never looked so cold. Admiral Kong Jay stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dawn, and watched 10,000 enemy warships surround his home. Earth floated below, blue and green and beautiful. Unaware that these were her final hours, the Galactic Dominion had come without warning. Their fleet appeared from wormholes across the solar system, blocking every escape route. Their message was simple and cruel. Humanity had grown too fast. Humanity had spread too far. Humanity was now a problem that needed to be solved. High Counselor. Vorn's face filled every screen on Earth. His gray skin and black eyes showed no emotion as he delivered the ultimatum. Surrender. Accept relocation to labor worlds at the edge of the galaxy. Become servants. Or die. Kong Jay was 60 years old. He had spent his entire life in service of Earth's defense fleet. He had 200 ships under his command. 200 against 10,000? The math was simple. The math was death. But humans had never been good at math when it came to freedom. Admiral, his communications officer, said, "The Dominion is waiting for our response." Kong Jay looked around his bridge. He saw young faces and old faces. He saw fear and courage mixed together in every pair of eyes. These people had families below on Earth. They had children who would never grow up if today went wrong. "Open a channel," he said, "to everyone, Earth and the Dominion fleet. Let them all hear." The light turned green. Kong Jay straightened his uniform and spoke. "This is Admiral Kong Jay of the Earth Defense Fleet. We have received your demands. We reject them. Earth will not kneel. Earth will not serve. If you want our world, come and take it. But no, this we will make you pay for every inch in blood." We cut the transmission. Silence filled the bridge for a long moment. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Soon the whole bridge was cheering, even though they all knew what was coming. Far below on Earth, in a hidden facility beneath the mountains of Korea, an old scientist named Lee Tae watched the Admiral's speech with tears in his eyes. He had predicted this day for 40 years. Everyone had called him crazy. Everyone had said the galaxy was peaceful. Everyone had been wrong. Lee Tae turned to the young engineer beside him. Yoon-hana was only 32, but she had built miracles with her hands. For the past decade, she had worked on Lee Tae's secret project, hidden from governments and aliens alike. "It's time," Lee Tae said. Yoon-hana nodded. She pressed a button on her console and spoke into a microphone. "All Exodus vessels, this is launch command. Begin departure sequence. I repeat, begin departure sequence. May the stars guide us home someday." Across Earth in 12 hidden locations, massive ships began to rise. They were ugly things, built for survival rather than beauty. Each one carried 4 million people, families chosen by lottery, scientists, doctors, teachers, soldiers, and children. So many children. The Dominion fleet was focused on the battle above. They didn't notice the 12 ships slipping away towards secret wormholes that Lee Tae had mapped decades ago. They didn't see humanity's future escaping through the back door in orbit. The battle had begun. Kong Jay's 200 ships fought like demons. They were outnumbered 50 to 1, but they didn't care. Human pilots flew their vessels straight into enemy formations, weapons blazing. For every Earthship that fell, they took 3 Dominion vessels with them. Commander Rel watched from his flagship with growing frustration. He had expected this to be easy. He had expected humans to surrender or flee. Instead, they were fighting with a fury he had never seen from any species. "Enough," he growled. "Deploy the planet crackers." His officers hesitated. Planet crackers were forbidden weapons, meant only for dead worlds. Using them on an inhabited planet was supposed to be unthinkable. "Now," Rel said, "let the galaxy see what happens to species that resist the Dominion." 50 massive bombs fell toward Earth. They broke through the atmosphere like falling stars. When they hit, the world screamed. Kong Jay watched his home burn. Continents cracked apart. Oceans boiled into steam. Billions of voices cried out in terror and then went silent. His wife was down there. His daughter, his grandchildren, all gone in a flash of fire and death. Something broke inside him. Something else turned to iron. His ship was damaged, engines failing, weapons depleted. The Dominion fleet was already moving on, leaving the burning Earth behind. They thought the battle was over. They thought humanity was finished. Kong J opened one final transmission. His face, covered in blood and ash, appeared on screens across the Dominion fleet. "You think this is the end?" he said. "You think you've won? But you've made a mistake that will haunt your people for generations. You didn't kill all of us, and those who survived will remember. We will remember every face that burned today. We will remember every child who never got to grow up. We will remember, and we will return." He paused, staring directly into the camera. "We will return." Commander L laughed when he saw the transmission. The human admiral was clearly insane with grief. There was nothing left to return to. There was no one left to do the returning. Earth was dead. Humanity was dead. The problem was solved. He ordered his fleet to return home. The galaxy would learn from Earth's example. No one would ever resist the Dominion again. But deep in space, 12 ships flew through wormholes toward the unknown. 50 million humans huddled in the darkness, crying for their lost world, holding their children close, and making silent promises to the dead. Yoon Hannah stood at the window of her ship and watched the stars blur as they jumped through the wormhole. In her hand, she held a small bag of soil. "The last Earth from Earth will come back," she whispered. "However long it takes, we'll come back." Beside her, Li Tae closed his eyes and allowed himself to hope. The first chapter was written in blood and fire, but the story wasn't over. The story was just beginning, and somewhere in the burning ruins of the Eternal Dawn, Admiral Kong J's escape pod drifted silently among the wreckage. Its beacon dark, its passenger alive against all odds. Dreaming of revenge, 100 years passed like a long, dark dream. The Galactic Dominion celebrated a century of peace. They built monuments to their victory. They wrote history books that described humans as a dangerous species, a disease that had been cured. Children in Dominion schools learned about Earth as a warning. This is what happens when you resist. This is what happens when you don't obey. High Counselor Vorn grew old and died, praised as the leader who brought order to the galaxy. Commander Rel became a legend, the warrior who burned the human threat from existence. Statues of him stood on 100 worlds. He spent his final years writing his memoirs, scribing how he had saved civilization from the human plague. Earth became a tourist destination. Alien visitors came to see the dead world, to take pictures of the scorched continents and the empty oceans. They bought souvenir small pieces of human artifacts pulled from the ruins. A child's toy. A wedding ring. A photograph of a family that no longer existed. The galaxy forgot. The galaxy moved on. The galaxy slept peacefully, believing the nightmare was over, but far away. At the very edge of known space, in a cluster of stars that no alien had ever visited, 50 million humans refused to forget. The 12 ships had traveled for years through uncharted space. They lost 2 vessels, 2 accidents, and another to a strange space storm. But 9 ships survived. Carrying 40 million souls to a new home, they found a cluster of 7 habitable worlds orbiting twin suns. The planets were wild and dangerous, filled with strange creatures and harsh weather. But they were alive. They were free. They were far from the Dominion's reach. They named the system New Dawn. The first generation worked themselves to death building colonies. They dug homes into mountainsides, planted crops in alien soil, and raised children in underground shelters. Life was hard. Many didn't survive. But those who did grew strong. The second generation expanded. They built cities and factories and schools. They developed new technologies, mixing human knowledge with discoveries from their new worlds. They had children of their own, children who had never seen Earth except in pictures and dreams. The third generation was born with fire in their blood. They learned to walk with Earth's gravity in their bones, simulated by the machines Yoon Hannah had built. They learned to speak with Earth's languages on their tongues. They learned to dream with Earth's blue skies in their hearts, even though they had never felt real rain on their faces. Yoon Hannah lived to see it all. She was 132 years old now, kept alive by medicine and stubbornness. Her hair was white and her hands shook, but her mind was still sharp. She had spent her entire life building ships, building cities, building hope. She sat in her workshop on New Dawn's largest planet, surrounded by screens showing the progress of her greatest project. Outside, in hidden shipyards carved into asteroids, thousands of warships were taking shape, sleek and black and deadly, built with a century of focused engineering. Built for one purpose, a young man knocked on her door and entered. His name was Park Woo, and he was 22 years old. He wore the uniform of the Reclamation Fleet, the military force that had been preparing for this moment since before his grandfather was born. "Chief Engineer," he said, bowing respectfully. "I've completed my pilot training. I'm assigned to the 7th Squadron." Yoon Hannah smiled at him. She saw so much hope in his young face, so much determination. He reminded her of herself, 100 years and a lifetime ago. "Sit down, young man," she said. "Tell me about your family." Park Woo sat across from her. "My grandmother was on the 4th ship," he said. "She was only 8 years old when we left Earth. She died last year, but before she went, she made me promise something." "What did she promise?" "She made me promise to see Earth's sky. She said the blue was different from any other blue in the universe. She said nothing in New Dawn came close." Yoon Hannah reached into her pocket and pulled out a small container. Inside was a handful of brown dirt, the same soil she had carried through the wormhole a century ago. "This is from Earth," she said. "From my family's garden in Korea. I've kept it all these years, waiting for the right moment to plant it again." Park Woo stared at the soil with wonder. "Is it really from there?" "It really is. And one day, you'll take it home." In another building, in a room filled with screens and data, Intelligence Commander Chomina was working. She was 55 years old, daughter and granddaughter of intelligence officers. Her family had been spying on the Dominion for 3 generations. She had agents everywhere, hidden in Dominion governments, working on Dominion ships, living in Dominion cities. For 100 years, her family had built a web of information that stretched across the galaxy. She knew every Dominion fleet position. She knew every supply line. She knew the names of every commander and the locations of every military base. She knew their strengths. More importantly, she knew their weaknesses. "The time is coming," she said to her officers. "We've been ghosts for a century. Soon, we'll be real again." Deep in the medical center, Admiral Kong Jae opened his eyes. He was 160 years old, kept alive by machines and medicine that pushed the limits of human science. He had spent decades in and out of medical sleep, waking only for important decisions, then returning to his dreams of burning Earth. But now he was awake for good. His doctors said he had maybe 10 years left. It would be enough. He stood slowly, his old bones aching. A nurse helped him to the window. Outside, he could see New Dawn's capital city. With its towers and parks and millions of people going about their lives, "They've built something beautiful," he said. "They built it for you, Admiral," the nurse said. "They built it to give you an army." Kong Jae nodded. He thought about his wife, dead for a century. His daughter, his grandchildren. All dust, now scattered in the ruins of Earth. "I made them a promise," he said. "I told them we would remember. I told them we would return." Turned from the window, his eyes hard as stone. It's time to keep that promise. That night, across all 7 worlds of New Dawn, 200 million humans looked up at the stars. They didn't know exactly when the return would begin, but they could feel it coming. 100 years of preparation. 100 years of waiting. 100 years of passing the flame from parent to child. The galaxy thought Earth died quietly. The galaxy was wrong. Earth's children had spent a century growing strong in the darkness. And now they were ready to step back into the light. Young Park Woo sat in his ship, running through simulator exercises. His squadron practiced formations they hoped to use against Dominion forces. His hands moved across the controls with natural grace, like he had been born to fly, because he had been. They all had been. 3 generations of humans, raised from birth with one dream in their hearts: Going home, the first outpost vanished on a quiet night. Station 12 was a small Dominion military base on the edge of explored space. 50 soldiers lived there, monitoring the empty darkness for threats that never came. It was boring duty, the kind given to soldiers who had disappointed their commanders. One day, Station 12 stopped sending reports. When a patrol ship arrived to investigate, they found the station intact. Lights still working, air still flowing, food still warm on the tables, but no people. Not one body. Not one trace of what had happened to 50 Dominion soldiers. The patrol commander reported equipment failure and personnel loss. The Dominion filed the report and forgot about it. Then Station 7 vanished. Then Station 23. Then an entire mining colony on a distant moon. Always the same pattern. No damage, no signs of battle, just empty buildings and unanswered questions. Commander Rel was old now, 170 years by his species count. He had retired decades ago, spending his days in a comfortable estate, writing history books about his great victory over the humans. Visitors came to hear his stories. Students came to learn from his wisdom. But lately, his sleep was troubled. He dreamed of Earth burning. He dreamed of that human admiral's face, bloody and defiant, promising to return. He woke in cold sweats, reaching for weapons that weren't there. It's impossible, he told himself. They're all dead. I killed them all. But the reports kept coming. Vanishing outposts. Missing patrols. Strange shapes seen at the edge of sensor range. Ships that didn't match any known design. Then came the ghost. Transmissions, a Dominion. Patrol was scanning the empty space between star systems when their communications officer heard something strange. A voice, speaking a language that had been dead for 100 years. Human language. The transmission lasted only seconds before cutting off. The patrol commander reported it to his superiors, who reported it to their superiors, who tried to bury the information before it caused panic. But panic came anyway. Across the Dominion, soldiers began reporting the same thing. Ghost transmissions and human speech. Strange ships that appeared on sensors for a moment and then vanished like smoke. Equipment that failed for no reason and started working again with human symbols flashing briefly on the screens. Commander Rel demanded a meeting with the current High Council. They didn't want to see him. He was a relic of the past, a retired hero with no official power. But he was persistent, and eventually they agreed. They're alive, Rel said, standing before the council chambers. The humans survived. I don't know how, but they did. The counselors laughed at him. They showed him the records Earth's complete destruction, confirmed by hundreds of probes over the past century. They showed him the population counts, 0 humans detected anywhere in the galaxy. They showed him the probability calculations, less than 1% chance that any significant number could have escaped. You're haunted by ghosts, old warrior. The new High Counselor said, Your guilt has driven you to madness. Go home, rest, let the dead stay dead. Rel left the chamber in shame, but he knew what he knew. He had looked into that human admiral's eyes 100 years ago. He had seen something there that he had never seen in any other species. He had seen patience. Far away. In the shadows of deep space, Chomina smiled as she read the intelligence reports. The psychological operation was working perfectly. For 50 years, her agents had been preparing for this phase. Tiny acts of sabotage. Whispered rumors. Carefully staged disappearances designed to make the Dominion doubt its own sanity. Fear is a weapon, she told her officers. We're going to make them afraid of the dark again. Ash. The operations grew bolder. Human stealth ships, so advanced that Dominion sensors couldn't track them, began striking military targets. Supply depots exploded. Weapons shipments vanished. Communication satellites went dark, but they never killed civilians. They never attacked homes or schools or hospitals. Every strike was surgical, precise, designed to weaken the Dominion military without giving them a clear enemy to fight. Who's doing this? Dominion commanders demanded. Who's attacking us? No one could answer. The ghost ships left no survivors to question. They left no wreckage to study. They came from nowhere and vanished into nothing. Park Wu flew one of those ghost ships. His squadron operated in complete radio silence, using technology that bent light around their vessels and scrambled any sensor that tried to find them. They struck fast and disappeared faster, never staying long enough to be caught. He remembered his grandmother's stories about Earth, the blue oceans, the green forests, the cities full of life and laughter. He had never seen any of it, but he carried it in his heart like a sacred flame. "This one's for you, grandmother," he whispered every time he flew a mission. The anniversary approached. 150 years since Earth's destruction. Cho Mina had planned something special. On that exact day, at that exact hour, every screen in the Dominion flickered. Every display, every monitor, every communication device in the entire empire went dark for 3 seconds. Then they lit up again, showing a simple image: the coordinates of Earth's location in space. Below the coordinates, 2 words in the human language, translated into every Dominion tongue. We remember the message lasted only moments before Dominion technicians regained control. But the damage was done. Billions of aliens had seen it. The impossible had been proven possible. Someone had hacked their entire civilization, and that someone was speaking from the grave. "Commander." Rel watched the message from his estate. His old hands trembled. His heart raced. For 150 years, he had told himself he was a hero. He had told himself he did what was necessary. He had told himself the humans were dangerous and deserved their fate. Now, staring at those 2 words, he felt something he had never felt before. He felt afraid in the shadows of the galaxy. Admiral Kong Jae watched the same message. He was dying now, his body finally failing despite all the medicine and machines. But his eyes were clear, and his mind was sharp. "Did they see it?" he asked. "Everyone saw it," Yunhana said. She was even older than him, barely able to stand, but she had refused to miss this moment. "The entire Dominion knows we're coming." Kong Jae nodded slowly. "Good. Let them know. Let them feel what we felt 150 years ago. Let them lie awake at night wondering when the sky will fall." He turned to the young officers assembled before him, Park Wu among them. These were the children of exile, born with war in their blood and Earth in their dreams. "The time for ghosts is ending," Kong Jae said. "The time for vengeance is beginning. Prepare the fleet. In 1 month, we return home." The young officers saluted, their faces hard with determination. They had been waiting their entire lives for these words. Across New Dawn's 7 worlds, 200 million humans looked up at the stars and smiled. The hiding was over. The waiting was done. The ghosts were becoming real. The wormholes opened like wounds in space. They appeared everywhere at once. Dozens of them scattered across the Dominion's territory, tearing holes in the fabric of reality. For a moment, Dominion sensors showed nothing but darkness on the other side. Then the ships came through. Not hundreds, not thousands. Tens of thousands. Black vessels with sharp angles and glowing engines built for war and ready for blood. They poured through the wormholes in perfect formation, filling the space around them with metal and fire. Every Dominion fleet scrambled to respond. Every military base went to high alert. Every communication channel flooded with panicked reports. The ghost ships from 100 nightmare stories had become terribly, impossibly real, and at the head of the largest fleet. On the bridge of a warship named Eternal Dawn 2, Admiral Kong Jae broadcast his message to the galaxy. His face appeared on every screen, in every home, on every world. He was old and tuned by any measure, but his eyes burned with a fire that had never dimmed. Behind him stood officers in black uniforms, humans from 3 generations of exile. "My name is Kong Jae," he said. 150 years ago, you burned my world. You killed my family. You murdered 8 billion of my people and called it justice." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You thought we died quietly. You were wrong. We survived. We grew strong. We built an army in the darkness, and now we have returned." Across the galaxy, billions of aliens watched in frozen terror. The humans they had been taught were extinct stood before them, very much alive and very much angry. "We do not come for innocent lives," Kong Jay continued. "We do not come to do what you did to us. We come for justice. We come for the military forces that burned our home. We come for the commanders who gave the orders. We come for the truth of what happened to be written in the stars." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to something cold and hard. "And we will not be stopped." The first battle happened within hours. Dominion defense fleet of 300 ships met a human attack force near a military shipyard. The Dominion commander was confident his ships were battle-tested, his crews experienced. He had faced enemies before. He had never faced anything like this. The human ships moved with impossible speed and precision. They danced through the Dominion formation like water through stone, striking from angles that shouldn't have been possible. Their weapons punched through Dominion shields like paper. Their pilots flew without fear, without hesitation. Park Wu was among them. His fighters screamed through the chaos of battle, targeting Dominion weapon systems with surgical accuracy. He didn't think about what he was doing. His body knew. His blood knew. 3 generations of training flowed through his hands as he flew. "For Earth," he whispered, squeezing the trigger. The battle lasted 40 minutes. The Dominion fleet was destroyed. The human force lost 12 ships, 12 against 300. News of the defeat spread through the Dominion like fire. More battles followed, each one ending the same way. Human fleets appeared from nowhere, destroyed military targets, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. They freed slave worlds the Dominion had conquered. They offered alliance to species that had been crushed under Dominion rule for centuries. "Join us," the humans said, "or stay out of our way. Either is fine, but do not stand against us." Many species joined. They had suffered under the Dominion for too long. They had watched Earth burn and known they could be next. Now, finally, someone was fighting back. Commander Rel watched the reports from his estate with growing horror. Every strategy the Dominion tried failed. Every trap they set was avoided. Every ambush they planned was turned against them. "How?" he demanded. "How do they know everything?" He didn't know about Chomina's intelligence network. He didn't know that human spies had spent a century infiltrating every level of Dominion society. He didn't know that every military plan, every fleet movement, every secret communication was being read by human eyes before it was even sent. The Dominion was fighting blind against an enemy that could see everything, Admiral. Kong Jay pushed his fleet forward, world by world, system by system. His body was failing. The doctors gave him weeks, maybe days, but his will was iron. He would see this through. He had promised Yun Hana died on the 3rd week of the campaign. She was 133 years old, the last surviving member of the original Exodus. She died in her sleep, peaceful. With a smile on her face, they found a note beside her bed. "Plant the soil in Korea, where my grandmother grew tomatoes." Kong Jay wept when he heard the news. He had known her for over a century. She had built the ships that carried them to safety. She had built the fleet that would carry them home. She had never stopped believing, even when belief seemed foolish. "We'll honor her," he said. "We'll plant her garden in Earth's soil," the campaign continued. One by one, Dominion military forces fell. Space stations were captured. Weapons factories were destroyed. The great war machine that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries began to crumble. And then finally, the human fleet reached the Dominion homeworld. Park Wu looked through his cockpit window at the alien planet below. Blue oceans, green continents, not so different from the Earth he had seen in pictures. Millions of aliens lived down there, families and children. People who had nothing to do with the decision to burn his ancestors' world. He thought about his grandmother. He thought about Yun Hana. He thought about all the stories he had grown up hearing. Stories of fire and death and a promise made in blood. "Admiral," he said over the communication channel, "what happens now?" Kong Jay stood on the bridge of his flagship looking down at the Dominion homeworld. Thousands of human warships surrounded the planet, weapons locked, ready to fire. He had the power to do what they had done to Earth. He had the power to burn every city, boil every ocean, crack every continent. He thought about his wife, his daughter, his grandchildren, all dust now, scattered in the wind of a dead world. He thought about Yunhana's garden, about the soil she had carried across the stars, waiting for a home. He thought about what his people had become in the century of exile, the schools they had built, the art they had created, the children they had raised with love instead of hate. Were they going to throw all of that away? Were they going to become the monsters that had made them? Admiral, his weapons officer, said, awaiting your order. Kong Jae was silent for a long moment. The galaxy held its breath. Then he spoke. Hold fire. Open communications. Tell the Dominion Council that we are prepared to accept their surrender. His officers stared at him in shock. Some looked angry. Some looked confused. Some looked relieved. Sir, his first officer said carefully, they killed 8 billion of us. I know, Kong Jae said. I was there. I watched Earth burn. I've dreamed about revenge every night for 150 years. He turned to face his crew, his old eyes filled with something beyond anger, beyond hate. But we didn't survive just to become them. We're better than that. We have to be better than that. Or everything we've built, everything we've suffered for, means nothing. Then, slowly, Park Woo's voice came over the channel. He's right. My grandmother didn't raise me to be a monster. She raised me to be human. This is what being human means. One by one, the other officers nodded. The weapons stood down. The communication channels opened. The war was over. Now came the harder part. Building a peace worth living in. The surrender came at dawn. Hi, Counselor. Vorn, the third grandson of the Counselor who had approved Earth's destruction, knelt before Admiral Kong Jae in the Great Hall of the Dominion capital. Cameras broadcast the moment to every world in the galaxy. Billions watched as the mightiest empire in known space bent its knee to the species it had tried to erase. We accept full responsibility, Vorn said, his voice trembling. We will submit to whatever justice you demand. We ask only that you spare our civilians, our children, those who had no part in the crimes of our ancestors. Kong Jae stood before him, supported by Park Woo on one side and Cho Mina on the other. He was dying, everyone could see it. His skin was gray, his breathing labored. The machines keeping him alive were working at their limits. But his eyes were clear. Stand up, Kong Jae said. Four looked up in confusion. Sir, stand up. I'm not going to make you kneel. That's not who we are. Slowly, Vorn rose to his feet. He was twice Kong Jae's height, but somehow the old human seemed larger. 150 years ago, your people burned my world, Kong Jae said. They killed everyone I loved. They thought they were solving a problem. They thought they were bringing order to the galaxy. He paused, gathering strength for his next words. They were wrong. Killing is never order. Genocide is never justice. It's just pain creating more pain, hate creating more hate forever and ever until there's nothing left. Vorn opened his mouth to speak, but Kong Jae raised a hand. We could do to you what you did to us. We have the power. Many of my people want revenge. They deserve it. They grew up orphans of a murdered world. They have every right to their anger. He looked out at the cameras, speaking now to the entire galaxy. But revenge isn't why we survived. We survived because we believed humanity was worth saving. Not just our lives, but our souls. Who we are. What we stand for. Kong Jae stepped closer to Vorn, looking up at the towering alien. So here is our justice. The Dominion will be dissolved. Its military forces will be dismantled. War criminals will face trial, real trials, with evidence and defense and fairness. The species you conquered will be freed. The slaves you took will be returned to their homes. Vorn nodded quickly. Yes, yes, of course. Whatever you demand. And one more thing, Kong Jae said. You will help us rebuild Earth. Your resources, your technology, your labor will help us make our home green again. You will help us bring life back to the world you killed. Tears rolled down Vorn's gray face. We will, I swear it. Kong Jae nodded slowly. Then we're done here. He turned and walked toward the door, his officers supporting him. Behind him, Vorn called out, "Admiral, why? Why spare us? After everything we did, why show mercy?" Kong Jae stopped, but didn't turn around. Because mercy is what separates civilization from barbarism. Because my granddaughter who died on Earth was the kindest person I ever knew. And she would have hated to see me become a murderer in her name. He glanced back over his shoulder. And because the galaxy needs to learn that strength doesn't mean cruelty. That power doesn't mean destruction. That winning doesn't mean becoming the evil you fought against. He looked at Park Woo, standing young and straight beside him. The future belongs to them now. I want them to inherit something worth having. 3 days later, the first human ship entered Earth's orbit in 150 years. Park Woo piloted it himself. He had requested the honor, and Kong Jae had granted it. The ship was small, designed for surveying rather than war. Its name was New Dawn, the same as the system that had sheltered humanity through its long exile. He looked down at Earth through his window, and his heart broke and healed at the same time. The planet was scarred. The continents were misshapen, melted by the planet crackers. The oceans were smaller, darker. No lights shone from the surface at night. It was a wounded world, barely alive, but it was alive. Sensors showed plants growing in the ashes stuff, simple things that had survived against all odds. Bacteria filled the waters. The atmosphere was breathable, if barely. Earth was waiting to be healed. Admiral Park Woo said into his communicator, "I'm beginning descent," acknowledged Kong Jae's weak voice replied. "Find somewhere beautiful." Park Woo. "Find somewhere green." Park Woo searched for hours, flying low over the changed landscape. Finally, in a valley that might once have been Korea, he found a patch of wild grass growing beside a stream of clear water. He landed and stepped out onto Earth's soil for the first time in his life. The air smelled strange. The gravity felt different from the simulation. The sky was gray with clouds, but as he watched, they parted briefly, showing a glimpse of blue, just like his grandmother had described. Like nothing else in the universe, he fell to his knees and wept. Admiral Kong Jae died 7 days later. They brought him down to Earth on a medical shuttle, keeping him alive just long enough to feel the real sun on his face. They carried him to the valley where Park Woo had landed, where terraforming teams were already beginning the century-long work of healing the planet. Cho Mina was there, along with 1,000 humans who had made the journey from New Dawn. They stood in silence as Kong Jae was laid on the grass. His old face turned toward the sky. "Is this Earth?" he whispered. "Yes," Admiral Park Woo said, kneeling beside him. "This is Earth. We're home." Kong Jae smiled. It was the first real smile he had worn in 150 years. "The soil," he said. "Yoon Hana's soil. Plant it here." Park Woo took out the small container he had carried since leaving. New Dawn. Inside was the handful of earth that Yoon Hana had saved from her family's garden. Carried across the stars through a century of exile, he dug a small hole with his hands and poured the soil in. Then he planted a tomato seed, preserved from the old world. "It's planted, Admiral," he said. "It's home." Kong Jae nodded slowly. His breathing grew shallow. His eyes began to close. "Tell them," he whispered. "Tell everyone. Tell them what we became. Not conquerors. Not monsters. Tell them we were humans. Tell them we went home, took one last breath of Earth's air." Then he was gone. They buried him in that valley beside the planted seed. A simple marker stone read, "Kong Jae, Admiral, Father, Human," he remembered. In the years that followed, Earth slowly healed. Terraforming technology from 20 species worked together to restore the oceans, clean the atmosphere, rebuild the ecosystems. Humans returned by the millions, building new cities on the bones of old ones. Other species came to allies who had fought beside humanity. Former subjects of the Dominion seeking new homes. Earth became a symbol, not just for humans, But for everyone who believed that survival meant more than just staying alive, Park Woo became an admiral himself in time. He had children, and his children had children. He lived to be 93 years old, and on his last day, returned to that valley in Korea. The tomato plant had grown into a garden. The garden had grown into an orchard. The orchard had grown into a forest, spreading green across the valley where he had first set foot on Earth. He sat beneath a tree that his grandmother would have, loved and watched the sunset paint the sky in colors she had described to him so many times. "We made it," he said to no one in particular. "We actually made it." Above him, the stars came out one by one. Somewhere among them, the species of the galaxy were building a new order, one based on cooperation instead of conquest, on justice instead of fear. They called it the Human Alliance. Though humans were only one of hundreds of member species, they called it that because of what humanity had taught them, that the strongest power in the universe isn't destruction. It's the choice not to destroy, that the greatest victory isn't over your enemies. It's over your own rage, that going home isn't about geography. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be. The galaxy had thought Earth went quietly. The galaxy had trembled when Earth returned. But the real lesson wasn't in the war or the victory. The real lesson was in what came after. In the gardens planted in ashes. In the mercy shown to enemies. In the children playing under trees that their great-grandparents had only dreamed about. Humanity had come home, and they had brought hope with them. That was the story the galaxy would remember forever.